If you're a regular viewer of my channel, you know that almost all of my videos are about topics related to psychology and the understanding and treatment of a variety of mental health conditions, including depression, anxiety disorders, and trauma. And one of the challenges with that sort of focus is that it's easy to assume that the psychological techniques and interventions that I talk about as ways of treating these various psychological conditions are only useful in treating psychological disorders. But the reality is, a lot of the skills and the tools that we talk about in terms of how to treat depression and anxiety, these are skills and tools that people without psychological disorders can use to promote and advance their own mental well-being. And what I want to talk about today is how these same psychological tools led me to become a marathon runner, and how they shaped some of my ultimate goals and plans related to future marathons. Now, by way of background, prior to July 2018, I had never been a runner. I never ran for enjoyment, I never ran for exercise, I never ran because I saw no purpose or utility in it. It wasn't something that appealed to me, and I never fathomed that I would ever become someone who enjoyed running, let alone long-distance running like marathons. But the story behind me deciding to run a marathon had its genesis in 5 words. I could never do that. I was at the wedding of a good friend of mine, and they had a video montage of these various moments in the bride and groom's lives. And one of the pictures that came up was my friend finishing a marathon a few months earlier. And I remember when I saw that picture of him crossing the finish line, I said to myself, that's crazy that he ran a marathon. I could never do that. And it was like one of those epiphany moments that you have every once in a while during your life. I caught myself saying, I could never do that. And I stopped, and then I thought, why couldn't I do that? Now, I was able to come up with all sorts of reasons why I thought I couldn't run a marathon. It's too far to run, I don't run, I've never run a road race or any kind of race for that matter. I never ran in high school, I never ran in university. Running marathons is something only really athletic and strong people do. I'd never make it, my knees wouldn't handle running that far. There were lots of reasons for me to believe that I could never do that. But I continued to mull over why I could never do that. There was something about those 5 words, I could never do that, that stuck with me. It didn't sit quite right. It reminded me of something that my dad always used to tell me when I was younger. If anyone else can do it, why can't you? And so that night in July 2018, I decided that I was going to run a marathon. And so you might be wondering, what exactly does this have to do with psychology? Well, one of the big things I frequently talk about is the internal dialogue and the messages that we tell ourselves. We constantly have thoughts going through our heads and assumptions and beliefs about ourselves, what we're capable of, and what we can and cannot do. And it's remarkable how much we limit our lives and our goals and our expectations by the things that we tell ourselves. Why can't I run a marathon? Because I told myself that I could never run a marathon. And as long as I believed that it was true, it was true. But how did I know that? The only way I could actually know was by questioning that thought of, I could never do that, and then taking steps to actually test out whether or not it was true. Now, I once had a person tell me, oh, so you were trying to prove yourself wrong. And I don't think that's quite right. I think that viewpoint takes an overly negative perspective on how I was thinking about the situation. The thing was, I didn't know if I was capable of running a marathon. So it wasn't like I was trying to prove something to myself or prove myself wrong. It was more a question of curiosity and the unknown. Was I capable of running a marathon rather than just accepting the belief of I could never do that? And as it turns out, the belief wasn't true. Since 2019, I've run 4 marathons, and 2 of the marathons that I've run were the world major marathons in New York and Chicago, which leads me to a bigger running goal, which is to complete all 6 of the world major marathons. So next up on my list is to run the Boston Marathon in April of 2025. But if you know anything about getting into the Boston Marathon, it's not simply as easy as applying and getting accepted. You have to run faster than a certain qualifying time for your age and your gender. And so, I'm going to be running a marathon in Washington State in September 2024 with the hope of running fast enough that I'll qualify for and get into the 2025 Boston Marathon. And after that, I'll have to set my sights on the London, Berlin, and Tokyo marathons to complete my goal of finishing all 6 world majors. And I hope to document some of this journey with occasional videos on how things are going with my marathon goals, as it may give a bit of a different perspective for this channel. We'll see if that's something people are interested in seeing. But I want to be clear, this really has very little to do with running a marathon, or running 6 of the biggest marathons in the world. Rather, I think of the marathon as a metaphor for accomplishing big things in life. For me, it was a moment in July 2018 in which I told myself I could never do that. And it just happened to be about running a marathon. But for someone else, it may be something completely different. Becoming a doctor, having children, getting into a particular university, buying a home, traveling around the world, improving physical fitness. Anything that could be important or meaningful to you that you could never imagine yourself ever being able to accomplish. We all have these metaphorical marathons in our minds, those things that we tell ourselves, I could never do that. And as long as we accept that belief to be true, it will be true, even though it may not be, if that makes sense. These metaphorical marathons are remarkable things that we're capable of accomplishing if we put ourselves out there, take a risk, and give ourselves a chance to fail, while at the same time giving ourselves a chance to succeed. And there is so much psychology wrapped up in all of it, and there are so many psychological tools and techniques that people can use to tackle these metaphorical marathons in their lives. And if I get into Boston, I have thoughts about a video detailing all of the different psychological skills and tools that I use to get there. So I know this is a bit of an unusual video for me to make, and I hope you found it interesting, but more so, I hope that it draws attention to our tendency to limit ourselves by the messages that we tell ourselves and the things we say that we're not capable of. And we do it all the time, with little things and with big things. So if you ever catch yourself saying, I could never do that, be sure to ask yourself why. And ask yourself, is it actually true that I could never do that? How do I know I could never do that? So for those who are interested, I'll provide occasional update videos and shorts documenting where I'm at with regards to getting into the Boston Marathon and beyond. So I'll hope you'll keep an eye out for those videos. And if you're interested in learning more about some of the faulty beliefs and assumptions that we have that often limit ourselves, I encourage you to check out this video. So that's all for today's video. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.